Okay, I think we're going live.
Okie dokie.
Hello. Welcome back to another video. My name is Gemma. Hello. And you are tuned in for FOMO Live. We have Jack from Spread
Hello.
Book Joy here. And yeah, we're going to talk about Unsheltered today. So
big thick.
I read mine on the Kindle of Dreams. So
we got
we've
people.
Got the lovely Cat. Hi, Cat.
Hi, Cat.
Hope everyone is doing well. Excited for the discussion. I really enjoyed Unsheltered. Your first Baba Kingsolver. That's exciting. I would say, Cat, you have much better to come.
I'd say too, actually. I think I really enjoyed Unsheltered, but I think I've only ever read the Poisonwood Bible, and that's up there.
Yeah.
Me.
Hello, Ange.
Hi, Ange.
Set in with some lemony black tea.
I thought I read that as lemony snicket. Like it's just books on the brain. It's a lemony snicket tea. I just saw lemony and word snicket in my head.
Oh dear, you're a tea person, aren't you, Jack?
I am, but I didn't have time to make tea, so I've just got water
in a teacup. Oh, lovely Charlie's here.
Hi, Charlie.
Oh, Jane. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Oh, and Cheryl's here as well.
Hi,
Cheryl. And Berna.
Berna. I'm looking forward to hearing Berna's thoughts. Actually, Berna wasn't. I don't think Berna liked the book, but we're looking forward to hearing her thoughts.
Yeah, we might be on a level then, Berna. And Jolene, lovely Jolene.
Hi, Jolene. Hi, everybody. So nice to see everyone here.
It is nice to see everyone here. I think maybe we start by addressing the obvious.
Yes.
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, so basically we're so pleased everyone's come to join us, and we've both been a little bit nervous actually about having this live discussion because it's the first FOMO live that we've had without our wonderful friend Alice, who started this with us, and we started on this journey with her. And yeah, it's been difficult to try and initially it was difficult to think about what we would do going forward, but when we started this book club, the FOMO book club, we were all just chatting one day and decided that we were chatting about books that everyone else has read that we haven't read, that we need to have read, that we've missed out on. And then we started just talking about maybe reading them together. And then we just came up with the whole, I don't even know how the idea of the book club came about when we started talking about it, but it was such a natural progression for us. And it was such a big part of the three of us and our friendship. So it was really important to us that we got together and figured out what to do and carry it on, because it's difficult without her and the absence of Alice, and I just miss her so much. And this week's been quite difficult actually, because thinking about this live, but it's also a way of connecting and keeping that connection with her because it was so important to all of us. So yeah, and I think she'd just be so furious if we didn't carry on with it. She'd be like, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing that? Yeah. So
yeah, I think as well, like Alice put so much work into this. She was a massive part of making it work, and we didn't want to see all of her hard work just disappear. So yeah.
I mean, this is it. Alice, I've popped into the Discord a couple of times. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put a little reminder in to pop into the Discord and check the Discord and start checking it, because I know Alice ran she set it up, she ran the discussions, she was so good at that kind of thing. Like so I'm going to try and make the effort to keep the Discord running as well, because she set that up and she was so good at it. And yeah, I'm terrible at using Discord. That's why I don't go on there very often. But yeah, I know it's a place that a lot of people enjoyed talking about the books, and she made it a nice space. So yeah, we're going to try and carry on with that. Yeah, and so one of the things we found difficult. So I think it's all these firsts, isn't it? When you do your first thing without someone, and your first thing is something you always did together. So we picked new books, haven't we? And it was one of the things that the three of us absolutely adored was the day we get together and pick the FOMO books. So the first year we did it, it kind of just was this kind of like, oh, let's get these lists together and spent about.
We were supposed to. Yeah, we all lost our whole day.
Yeah, it was wonderful because we were like, oh, I want to do this. And I was working and you were working, and we were both like, this is much more interesting than
not much work got done that day.
And then last year we were like, oh, let's get together and do it again. And it was around this time, it was in August last year that we did it. We got together, we had our lists of books, and we've been keeping everything in Google Docs, which is great because it means we still have everything. So it wasn't like going hunting for these documents. So we've got Alice's list of books. So yeah, so that was lovely because we've got a whole list of the books that she wanted to champion for FOMO Book Club, which I'm sure she would have added to far more by now. So we were sitting thinking about what to do about it, and we just about, you know, do we pick a couple off of Alice's list? Do we see what's mixing with her list and our list? And actually, in the end, we decided that you and I both had one book that Alice absolutely loved and we still haven't read, which was Cloud Cuckoo. Oh, I'm going to announce it. Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Here it is.
Right, and here it is. So basically, is that our first book?
This is our first book. This is the November book.
So yeah, the November and December book. So as you know, we've still got, we'll talk about Unsheltered and we'll talk about the last book that's on this year's list that Alice picked with us, which was Horror Store. So we've got Horror Store to go, which Alice actually sent me this and this for Christmas. So so Unsheltered was July, August, September, October is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. We'll talk about at the end as well, just to remind everyone that we're going to be doing that. And then we're going to launch into 6 new books. So Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is probably the biggest book we've done, I think.
It will be the biggest today, but it won't be the biggest today by this time next year.
Okay. So basically, yes. So we've got Cloud Cuckoo Land. We've picked Cloud Cuckoo Land in honor of Alice because it was one of her books that she absolutely loved over the last couple of years. Very excited about that. We've got another Alice book coming up, which we'll talk about. So what we decided to do this year was we picked 2 books that were favourites of Alice's that she would love people to read. Yeah. So Cloud Cuckoo Land is one of them, and that's November and December. And then the rest of the books, we carried on with the sort of method that we had where we voted and we like got the list down and then ranked them. And we even looked at Alice's votes to see if her votes from last year would swing any of it. So I kind of think we've kept the same method. And yes, I think Alice is very much a big part of this list. So yeah, so that's the first book. So we're going to announce the rest of the books as well. So we hope everyone can join us for next year. We're going to do some announcement videos, but we thought we would announce it on this live because we wanted to talk about the future of the club and everything else today. So yeah, so that was the first book. Yes. Yeah, I think so. We've got some comments about Cloud Cuckoo Land as well, actually. Yeah, we've got a few comments actually. Just lots of support from everyone. So I appreciate that. I can't read them out because I will cry. Yes, we'll cry. Yeah. So I appreciate all the support and I have read them, but I can't read them out. Alice would be so excited about Cloud Cuckoo Land. I remember when I first bought this, I was in the shop and there was a choice between this and something else. And I gave the choice to Charlie, my youngest son, and he wanted this one because it had a cloud on it. And I immediately texted Alice and I was like, Charlie picked this because of the cloud. And she was like, he has excellent taste. So I'm glad that we're finally getting to that. Yes, I am as well, because I bought it straight after Alice's like rave reviews on it. I've got it on the Kindle because I'm getting to the point where I can't hold up big books anymore, so I'm buying everything on the Kindle. And yeah, so I've had it there since she championed it, really. So I'm really glad to get into it. For sure. Alice would be thrilled. Jane, have you read it? Did you already get to that one? Berna also added Cloud Cuckoo Land because of Alice's recommendation. Have you read it, Berna? Did you read it? I wonder if she's read it yet. I'm looking forward to reading it. Yeah, let us know if anyone's read it. If anyone has read it. So yeah, so that was our first pick, and that was very much an Alice-inspired choice. Yes. And I think we've got a good range of books. Every year we've had a good range. So that's kind of a very recent book, which is historical, isn't it? Is it also like a bit should we say what it's about, really? I suppose, in case anyone doesn't know the book. I don't know, in case anyone does want to catch up on this.
We can. I think it's 3 timelines, isn't it? Isn't it a past, a present, and a future?
Yeah. And isn't there like a library or a book? There's like a. It's a. I remember the 3 timelines.
Yeah, bound together by a single ancient text.
Yes. So we love a book about a book within a book, right?
Yeah.
So
and it's set in Constantinople. Yeah.
Which is also very Alice as well, isn't it? She loves books about books and books within books. And
she did love that, yeah, for sure.
So so next book in January, February, a bit shorter. We've gone for a 20th century classic. It's a reread for both of us, but you haven't read it since school, right?
Yeah, no, I was about 15 when I read it.
So we're going for To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. So I love To Kill a Mockingbird. So if anyone, I'd be surprised if there are people out there who haven't read it, but if there are people who haven't read it and are afraid to tell anybody they haven't read it, you can read it with us. Yeah, so I absolutely love To Kill a Mockingbird. It's one of my favourite sort of classic books. I read it at school, and the last time I read it was about 10 years ago, and I listened to Sissy Spacek reading it, which is a brilliant audiobook, by the way.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to listen to it on the audiobook. But yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is January, February. Yes. And it's also such a rereadable book that I think, even if you have read it, people might want to join for a reread. So good. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's one of those books that people can reread again and again, right? So.
And you get stuff out.
Can you read it with us?
What's that?
I said, come reread it with us.
Yeah, come and reread To Kill a Mockingbird with us. So To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh yes, then March, April. We've gone with the theme of keeping to the sort of having we haven't got a middle grade this year, but we have got like a YA, which says kind of upper end of middle grade or YA.
Yeah. I think I read it when I was about 12.
Okay. So we've gone for a book I've never read, and Gemma was absolutely shocked.
Horrified,
in fact. And it is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. So that's the March, April pick. And again, it's quite a thick book for a younger.
And it's the shortest because it's the first of a quartet.
And they're huge.
Actually, there's 5 now. What is that?
Was there a recent one?
Yeah, there's a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Eragon by Christopher Paolini. Fantasy as well, which I'm very chuffed about. I'm really pleased about that. I've never read Eragon, so looking forward to that. And that's March. And we've kind of like gone big book, smaller book, slightly bigger book, smaller book, haven't we? We've tried to like
we haven't got the flow, yeah.
Oh yes, so May and June. I've only got this on the Kindle, so I have to hold up my iPad. Have you got the actual book?
I haven't. I've only got the Kindle version.
Yes, I feel like we've got a good mixture of books because in May, June, it's another one that's not too big, and it's Never Let Me Go, Kazuo Ishiguro's the book that got a lot of votes on that New York Times bestseller list.
It did. And I know that Alice has read that one as well.
Yeah. Alice has read this one. Yeah. So and everyone loves this book. I think it's his most popular book when people on those lists of like best books ever. This one always comes higher than his other books, and I loved Remains of the Day, and this is a very, very, very different book. Very
dystopian
different.
This one, isn't it?
Yeah, dystopian book. And yeah, I'm kind of I don't want to know more about it than that. That's all I know about it. I've never watched the film, and I don't know much about it beyond the fact that this is dystopian book, and I don't want to know anymore because I just want to kind of let it unfold as I read it. So
Jane saying that Never Let Me Go was one of Alice's favourites. Yeah. Because I know she was working her way through Kazuo Ishiguro. She read quite a few. And I read The Remains of the Day with Alice.
Yes.
Last year.
So. And the thing, I'm sure so where there's one, like this one, neither you or I have read it, but I think Alice would have reread it if we were reading it because we had that little tick list of whether we would reread, but I'll reread it. It's fine. So so that's going to be May, June. So far we've had a historical, a 20th century classic, a YA fantasy, and now a sci-fi dystopian book. So that's pretty good, right?
Just want to draw attention to this comment where Anne is saying they're making us start a series referring to Aragon. But I would just like to set the record straight here, okay? It wasn't me that put that book on the list. It was Jack. It was
me.
Jack. I did vote for it, but it was Jack who put it on the list.
I put it on because it's been on my shelf for a while, and everyone's always like, "I can't believe you haven't read that," and I'm like, "I know, I missed out." It's perfect for FOMO. Like, it's like literally what we talk about when we talk about these FOMO books. So yeah, but yes, it is. You're right, Ange. It is the start of a series. Apologies. Yeah, another series I'm starting, and probably will then be on my list of series I need to finish.
Yeah. Lots of love for Never Let Me Go. Always wanted to read it. Great choice. Been wanting to read it. Cheryl bought it the other day. It's like fate, Cheryl.
It's meant to be.
Never read it, but excited to read it. I've read Remains of the Day. Yeah, same.
I loved Remains of the Day. Loved that book.
Yeah, this is definitely like the pinnacle of a FOMO book, right? Everybody wants to read it, but hasn't read it.
Exactly. All right. Now then, let me go back to another big book, because Never Let Me Go is not a long book, is it?
No.
Another big book for July, August. It's the summer. It's the summer. You might want a chunker for the summer. Fine Balance by Hinton Mystery. And this, I didn't know it was a Canadian book until I watched Jolene and Lindy's Canlit, like books everyone voted for Hinton Mysteries: A Fine Balance, which has been on my shelf for far too long. Because Scott's always raving about it over on Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. Was always raving about it as one of his favorites.
I think Sandy was raving about it last year as well.
Yeah, and I think
that's what made me pick it up.
Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, so it's supposed to be absolutely. I don't know anyone who's like not read it and gone, it's like just an amazing book. So yeah.
Oh, it's only 612. It's not that bad.
So it's not as big as Cloud Cuckoo Land for sure. I'm sure Cloud Cuckoo Land is 800 pages.
It's not that big.
This is quite small type though. Look.
It is. It's a lot smaller type than Cloud Cuckoo Land.
This is where I would need my bifocals.
This is 622.
Oh, okay. So
they're very similar.
Very similar in size.
In length.
Okay. So a Fine Balance. So I'm really looking forward to A Fine Balance. So in mid-1970s in India, tells the story of 4 unlikely people whose lives come together. Apparently it's a bit of a heartbreaker.
Brutal is what I heard.
Brutal. So some brutal. Actually, we've got quite a few brutal books. Let's see. There's nothing very light on here, apart from maybe Aragon, and I don't know how brutal that's going to be. But you think because it's a younger book for an younger audience,
so brutal. Yeah,
brutal. Okay. Now then, last book, and the last book is an Alice Pick book. Alice didn't pick it. We picked it. Was it on your list?
It was on my list. Yeah,
it was on your list, and we were looking at books on our list that we haven't read that are Alice favourites, and this came up. And I've read this book, and I have it, and I do love it, but I haven't read it since I was about 20. And I've got my nice 70s copy of it as well. So it's very short, and it's Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. And this was one of Alice's favourite books. I sent her a bookmark, a Clockwork Orange bookmark, actually. Yeah, one of the first birthday parcels I sent her, and it had a Clockwork Orange, a bookmark in it. And she loved this. And actually, it's kind of that type of book that Alice loves, the dystopian. She loved dystopian kind of apocalyptic kind of dystopian books or whatever. And this is, well, it is one of the, like, would you call it, like trend-setting kind of ones. I mean, it was a banned book here in the UK. Or it was the film that was banned, not the book. And it is really it's a classic. It's a 20th century classic. So if you've never read it, it's very short, but it's kind of very quite violent. And it's written in this kind of slang, this futuristic slang that they speak in. I can't remember what it's called, the way they speak. So for the first few pages, you're like, what am I reading? And then it kind of clicks into your brain and you start to understand what they're saying. So yeah, Clockwork Orange. So if you've never read it, it's very short. And yeah, it's it's a controversial film when it came out. And I think it's still, I don't know, would you say it's a controversial book now? I don't know so much, but yeah. but it was one of Alice's favourites. So, and I love it.
So Jane is saying Alice said this was her favourite book of all time, and that's what she said to me as well. But I think it's one of those books that she didn't talk about so much on her channel, so I feel like people are less aware of this as an Alice book. So we really wanted to sort of highlight it in FOMO because it is.
Yeah, and actually, this is quite a good thing to point. Like, it is a book that I knew was her favourite. And we had discussions about it, me and Alice, and we also kind of then off the back of that, we talk about dystopian fiction or an apocalyptic fiction and dystopian fiction and stuff. But all of the sort of, because Alice is so well known for her Agatha Christie, her Sherlock, championing all of those things, but she read so widely and diversely that actually, in terms of genre, that I think, it's quite nice to highlight some of her other favourites that she may not have been so well known for. So yes, I think this is a good choice, definitely. Yeah. So those are our 6 lovely books for the future of FOMO. So I'll just hold up these ones. The other ones are on my Kindle, but yes, there we go. So
these ones up. You've got black. I've only got 2.
So I've got all of those, and I'm really excited about this whole list. Absolutely thrilled by it. So, which is the whole point of when we started it, wasn't it? The 3 of us were like, when we pick these books, we can't just pick a book and go, I quite like to read that. It's got to be, I'm desperate to read that. Have to read that book. And we know, and this is why we also loved it, because we knew as soon as it went on the FOMO list, it would get read. Yes. Because it's not one of those things, I wanted to read it for years, but I keep getting pushed back. If it goes on the FOMO book list, we read it. So, very excited. Okay.
Yes. And me and Jack will be putting out announcement videos with the list of books. So you don't have to like trawl back through this live to find one of the 6 books, where there will be an announcement video on each of our channels at some point.
I think I might try and go back to doing that thing I did in the beginning, where I'm like, why you should read this book ahead of it coming out. I'm going to try and do that. I can't promise, but
when you did those.
So the very first few I did that. Why you should read to make it in, and why you should read this, even if I haven't read it, why you want to read it with us. But I think I might go back to doing that, actually, if I can pull my finger out and do it properly. Right. I'm glad everyone likes it. Everyone's on the list.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it, guys. Great news. We did spend quite a long time debating the different books.
Yeah, we did. We really did. So, Jane said Alice loved the language play. Yeah.
In The Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
I'm afraid to read A Clockwork Orange. The movie was hard to watch. Yeah, I think you have to be very aware of what it is when you're going into it. So I don't know if I'd recommend it for everybody. I think it's probably one of the reasons why Alice maybe didn't talk about it so much as widely on her channel, because there's certain books like that I love that are quite dark and quite difficult reads, but you wouldn't recommend them for absolutely everybody, as long as people are aware of what it is when they're going into it, I think, though.
It sounds like it's going to make for an interesting discussion.
I think so. Very interesting discussion.
Yeah. Okay. I think probably we should move on to Unsheltered.
Yes, let's move on to Unsheltered. I really want to talk about this book.
There is actually quite a lot to talk about. When Jack and I discussed earlier how we were going to break up the sections for today, just more ideas kept coming as we sort of talked about it. It's like, actually, there's a lot to talk about. But we're going to start with overall thoughts, and then I have a plethora of questions that Jack and I are going to discuss, but please answer them in the comments as we go through as well.
Yes.
So, Jack, general overall thoughts.
Overall thoughts. I really enjoyed reading it, but I wouldn't say it was one of those books that I kept wanting to pick. At certain points I wanted to pick it up, like, where you wanted to, like, it wasn't a book that kept me, because do you know one thing I dislike about Barbara Kingsolver, so we just start off with it, is how long her chapters are. Her chapters are so long, and I know it sounds really silly, but I know when there are shorter chapters, you just kind of sometimes you might read as much, but because there are shorter chapters, you kind of feel a bit more accomplished. And one of the reasons why sometimes I didn't want to pick it up, I picked it up and read it every day. Like I read a chapter a day. Like when I started reading it, that's how I did it. Maybe I missed out a couple of days, but it's just the thought of, I knew there were going to be like really long chapters because I had the audiobook as well. And sometimes the chapters of the audiobook were 2 chapters of the audiobook, but it was still the same chapter of the actual book. And so I think the way she and she did that with the Poisonwood Bible a little bit, not so much, because sometimes there were shorter chapters actually, but this was just, the chapters were so long. But regardless of that, it was fine. I found the book, her writing's really engaging. I really like her writing. I find she writes characters brilliantly. So you kind of, I've got a lot of thoughts about the characters, and they felt like really well-rounded, people. I think her writing is great. So her writing's interesting. The characters are interesting. The pace, I think the pace was probably the thing for me that I'm kind of a plot-driven reader in a lot of ways, and I like a bit of pace, and there wasn't really pace to this book. And I think if you're not someone who if you're someone who doesn't like that, then you're not going to get on with it. But I found the book interesting, and I found it enjoyable, and I found it really, really thought-provoking. And she has a lot to say about a lot of topics that are very, very, I mean, the book, I didn't know when it was written, but obviously it was written post-Trump. And then I was like, looked it up, and it was 2017 or 2018 or something like that. So, or it was published, I should say. And it's still so very relevant. Like we're just living through all this again, aren't we? Kind of what was going on in the book.
Yes.
Yeah. So I found it really fascinating. But in terms of, if I had to give it a rating, it would be a 4-star book for me. It wouldn't be a 5-star book for me. So because I don't rate books, but 5-star for me, I mean, I'm very stingy with 5 stars anyway, but this is definitely a 4-star book. I think it's a book that I think about for a long time after. And that's why I think it's one of those books that on reflection, when you think about it, you realize how much it's made you think and engage. So, but what were your thoughts on it, Gemma?
Oh dear. So, okay, I didn't detest it. Like you say, I find Barbara Kingsolver's writing style and her sort of cadence quite soothing and readable. So I feel like I'm in safe hands when I'm reading her prose. So I enjoyed that, but I think you're right. The pacing was off for me. I found the flitting between the 2 timelines really jarring. Like I was like, no, I just want to stay in the timeline that I'm in.
Yeah, I had that feeling actually.
I think because the chapters were so long as well, right? So like it would be like an hour and a half before you got back to where you were.
Yes.
So I don't think that worked particularly well. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But I did like the characters. I just felt the plot, there wasn't really that much plot. It was almost the skeleton of a plot that there was there so that Kingsolver could talk about her opinions on various topics like politics, feminism, that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But it made for a weak plot for me. And I think because I loved Poisonwood Bible and Demons so much, I was expecting greatness. So there was a level of expectation going in that I don't think she hit for me with this one.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And when you think about it, you're like, in terms of plot, like if you had to describe the book to someone, we should say as well, there are going to be massive spoilers. So if we haven't said that already, and if you really fancy reading Unsheltered and you're watching this and you haven't read it or haven't finished it, there will be massive spoilers. Having said that, when we say there are going to be massive spoilers, what really would have happened? Then we like in terms of what happened. It's not like we're going to reveal like the big ending, like, oh, there was a big, it wasn't like, it kind of was just a bit at the end, right? You know, it was kind of in terms of like the events of what was going on and what happened. And it was kind of like we dropped into these people's lives for a little while and then we dropped out of them in a way. Yes. And there was, I like the fact that it kind of ended with Willa writing this book, like wanting to, like she's obsessed with her, she's going to write this book. I kind of felt like, did you feel like Willa was a bit like Kingsolver herself, or like
yes,
yeah? So
yes.
So but yeah, so overall, yeah, I think I didn't have a bad time reading it by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I didn't, and I did enjoy it when I was reading it, but it was like I kept waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a 500-page book, right? And I didn't want to DNF it at any point. But
no, exactly. I just
kind of felt like I wanted it to get going.
Yeah. Well, actually, because I felt like that. Having read the Poisonwood Bible, and Alice and I read that together, and for like the first 200 pages, both Alice and I were going, I don't know. I don't get it. I'm not sure I'm really into this. And then by like after that, we were just hooked, and we could not stop reading it. And it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I kind of felt like Unsheltered was going to be that I was like, when it was slow start, I was like, it's fine. She's got this. It's fine. Yeah. At some point, I'm going to be like, I can't put this down. But I was never like that. Never like I can't put it down. But that doesn't mean I wasn't enjoying it or having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. And said for the first book, I enjoyed her writing and look forward to reading more from her. Like we said earlier, I think you're in for a treat.
Yes.
Like, if you liked this, you are absolutely going to adore her other work.
Yeah. I've got to read Demon Copperhead. Jolene and I are going to read Demon Copperhead. Yeah.
You do. You definitely do. Babs does like a long chapter. Yes. Hate long chapters. I like the book, but didn't like it quite as I have what?
Her other two I've read. As her other two, I imagine she means her other two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Autocorrect.
Yeah.
4-star read for me. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's 3 for me. So, you know. Berna found the book unimpressive aside from her writing. The plot was meh. The characters felt whiny. I gave it 6 out of 10. Well, you gave it like 1 more than me because I gave it 3 stars, so that would be like a 5. No, 6 out of 10. Yeah, same. Love character-driven books, and Kingsolver did a good job with her characters. I do agree. She does do good characters.
Very good.
Preferred the modern day timeline and observation on middle class America.
I know, yeah. Did you have a preference for timeline then, Jem?
I think if I had to pick, I would pick the modern timeline, though I really liked Mary Treat in the historical timeline. I didn't really care for Thatcher.
I liked both timelines a lot. At certain points, one was edging it over the other, which is why when you were like, the chapters are so long, you're like, no, I want to go what's going on, and then you've got to wait for another like massively long chapter before you get back to it.
Yeah.
And I loved Mary Treat. I was surprised because when you read the back, which I'm going to have to do this because I haven't got my bifocals with me, but basically Willa discovered the pioneering female scientist lived on the same street in the 1800s, blah, blah, blah. And when it said it was going to be a dual timeline, I thought the other perspective was going to be the female scientist. So I was really surprised when we got this perspective of the man living, well, he's living in her house, which we then get to know. That's why it's his perspective, I suppose. But I was really expecting it to be the female scientist's perspective in the the other timeline. But
disappointing. Agree with you about plot, Gemma. Another agree. Characters kept you going. Yet had the opposite problem. I didn't care for Demon Copperhead. Chris,
well, what everybody does, and this is why I've been like worried about reading it, because I thought, you know, I could offend people when I said I didn't like it, but we'll see. But it is if you think about the timeline of when the book is written, because in the book, in the modern day timeline, they're talking about an election. She never says Trump in the book. She just talks about the candidate, right? And then the book's published in 2018. He was elected in 2016. When was he elected? 2016, I feel like he was elected, because that was the year of Brexit, and like
it must be, because it's 24
that was the
now.
year that David Bowie died, and then Brexit happened, and Trump. I'm not saying these are all connected. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's 24 now. So
things happened.
So Biden came in 20, so Trump would have come in 16. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, she must have like this book. She's writing this book then, right? So she's writing this. She's like, obviously, this is all going on, and she's like, I've got so much to say about this, and this, I think, is like her. Like it's her at that time going, I've got loads to say about this and about the state of America, and like my big metaphor of this decaying, falling down house and America and capitalism, and it's like that's what this is. It's like this commentary, isn't it, that she's done at that time. Sure. And we're back at that time now, aren't we? It's like, do you feel like you're getting like deja vu?
Oh my goodness, it's like goldfish have a 3-second memory. Did you know that?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like a running joke in my family. Whenever someone like forgets something, you say, "That's a nice castle. That's a nice castle." That's what the Trump thing feels like, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a nice castle. Oh, we've forgotten that castle burned down. That's a nice castle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
it's like it's crazy. It's like every time you turn on an episode of EastEnders, I've watched it for 20 years with the same people having shouting matches. But yes. But it's her kind of like social commentary, which I found, I have to say, really fascinating. And all of like the kind of the motifs she's using to discuss it, the themes, the sort of this kind of feeling of this woman in modern times, like Willa, everything, like she's getting anxiety and depression because everything, she's like trying to hold her family together, trying to keep things going. And like, there's just all this systemic stuff going on, as well as their personal problems. And actually their personal problems are because of this systemic stuff, like the healthcare, his tenure, like the university closing. I found, when you really start to pick it apart and start thinking about it, like the book was really thought-provoking for me, which is the whole point of it, I suppose. But
I actually think it's quite a good book club pick because there's a lot to talk about. So Berna said if it wasn't for the book club, she would have DNF'd it. You can always DNF book club books, mate, and then still
that's fair.
Emily, maybe
I don't think it would be an Emily book, actually. I don't know if Emily. I don't think it was an Emily book.
This was my first Kingsolver. I have the Poison.
The Poison Bible.
It's so good.
It is so good. Starts off like, for me, I was like, I don't know if I'm into this story or into this theme. Just gets so good. So good.
Brilliant book.
That's a 5-star book, and I'm very stingy with 5 stars. So
yeah. Loved the Poison Bible. We'll eventually get to other Barbara Kingsolver books. Yep. Yeah. I own several. I think it's more about characters and observations on life in middle America. I was really interested in the various ideas.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to get to those for sure.
Yeah. I found the past timeline more interesting. I enjoyed both timelines too. I think I enjoyed the Mary Treat timeline a bit more. I enjoyed the relationship between Mary and Thatcher. Don't judge by Go ahead.
I was going to judge you on that. I think that's fair.
Judge you on that. I did prefer Demon though because of Demon, but I can concede to Poisonwood Bible. Okay, so what did the dual timeline add?
I'm not sure. I think they were both really interesting stories, but I've been trying to think about this since you sent these questions today. And I just don't, I mean, there's a kind of, I feel like, because Mary Treat's a real person, and obviously Kingsolver's got obsessed with her and gone down this little rabbit hole and got obsessed with her. The way that then Willa gets obsessed with her, and like when she was writing about how Willa gets obsessed with her, I was like, well, clearly this is what happened with you getting obsessed with her, and stuff, And it was interesting. I think the idea of this utopia, that this whole town was set up as this utopian vision after like the Civil War, like, is it the Civil War that's just happened? And so like this guy set this place up. It's supposed to be like the future of living, and it's going to be a utopia, and we're going to have these talks, and it was kind of like a social experiment. At a time of upheaval in these, I keep saying Victorian, they're not Victorians because they're not English, but you know that period of time. So what do I say, let's say 19th century. So there's 19th century post-Civil War. I think it's post-Civil War. Is the war still going on? I'm not sure. And there's all this social upheaval. There's the Civil War and emancipation of the slaves in America going on. There's this massive, big social change happening. And then there's Darwinism. And I think that was all really fascinating because it's like we're going through a time of upheaval and a time of uncertainty. And like there's this whole, the comparable massive shifts in social society for us are the internet and AI and all of those things, and the way that politics is impacted by all that. And they're going through this massive cultural shift and social shift. And then this guy's trying to set up this utopian ideal. But underneath it all, it's just this flawed and unfair society, because he's building off the back of these immigrants that he's promising all this utopia to, and they're coming to, and then there's kind of, so I felt like you could see why we've got this mirroring about it. But I'm still, I don't know, I can see why they're connected, but I'm still unsure as to why why they're not why there couldn't just be a book on their own, like why each one can be. Yeah. I think Willa's timeline is more dependent on their retreats, but
flashbacks, like 2-page flashbacks. Like you say, I think she's trying to show that in a lot of ways American society hasn't actually evolved much from where it was, because there are parallels to all of those things now.
Yeah, and the impact of those things that are still being felt now, right? Yeah.
So I kind of get where she was coming from that angle, but it just felt like two completely different, unrelated stories. There were, obviously there was some ties, like, this might have been Mary Treat's house, but actually it wasn't Mary Treat's house, so why do we care? It just, I think, like you say, they could have been two completely separate books, or almost told like back to back, like two very long short stories. Like
well, this is it. It's like, so you can see why she's got it. She's kind of done something structurally, narratively quite interesting in a way. And also, like, she's trying, like, for me, the purpose of the past timeline was this whole look where we were and look where we are and look where we still are. And, for me, that was kind of what I felt from it. And this whole idea was really strong about when people are going through a period of social change, that they will cling to anyone who promises them that they will not have to go through that change. And I can turn things back to the way they were. So the whole, MAGA idea and everything else, and we can go back to this like rose-tinted view of the past, and people who are afraid of change, whose lives are being, like Nick. We're going to talk about Nick, aren't we? Because that was a really interesting character.
Yes.
And I think, I can't remember. I think I've got the quote, but I think at one point, like, is it Mary Treat says about like why people, because he's like trying to figure out, Thatcher's trying to figure out why they're railing against Darwinism so much. I mean, that was a huge thing, obviously, evolution, the theory of evolution, and people going, well, we're human, we're superior, we are not animals, and like that whole. I mean, it's still being debated in a lot of places in America, isn't it? Like evolution and stuff. So, but she was like, it's when people think that things are going to be taken away from them, that their rights and their privileges as humans, Darwinism is taking that away. They're equating us with the animals, and we were up here, and now you want us to be here. And it's kind of, she's saying, and so this man, like the people who are fighting against Darwinism are promising, no, that's not right. You are still up here, or you should be. It was really
again, like, really interesting topic area, and I really enjoyed that section and the discussion around Darwinism. I thought it was really interesting.
Oh yeah.
However, like, why was it relevant?
Is it? I suppose. Yeah, I found the quote here that because I did highlight some things because I ended up getting the Kindle version as well. Actually, I already had the Kindle version. I think when men fear the loss of what they know, they'll follow any tyrant who promises to restore the old order. Which is so true, right? Obviously, that's what Mary Treat says to Thatcher.
And I think it all ties into the main themes, right? The themes of politics and whatever. The problem is it doesn't make for a cohesive story. Like it's just all these little bits of ideas that sort of are vaguely linked, but not enough for a plot.
I feel like it was kind of there to see. I think Kingsolver was obviously like really fascinated by this person, Mary Treat. She was also fascinated by what was going on with the country and with the Trump election when she was writing this book, and she's made this link between them, and I can see it in a way that she's trying to say, like, you know, these things have happened. This is what happens. This has happened before.
History repeating itself.
But yeah, I felt it was possibly fairly tenuous, you know.
Yeah.
Fascinating, but
Kat said, I think the dual timeline was the connection of the house. Also, both Thatcher and Willa are trying to deal with societal issues that were daunting in their era. Yeah.
Oh, and talking about the house, in the end, like it wasn't even the same house, because we didn't know what happened with Thatcher. But Thatcher, at the end, when she got the guy around, and he scraped the bricks, and the bricks were the family that his mother-in-law then married into, and he says, oh, you know, this house is much later, so clearly they knocked down Thatcher's house and built a new one,
rebuilt it, because it was falling apart, wasn't it?
It wasn't even the same house. In the end, is what I took from that. I don't know if I'm wrong or I got that wrong, but
it was rebuilt. So, but obviously Thatcher had left by then, right? So it's rebuilt by
by the mother-in-law and
wife. Berna, the house is falling again as both characters are going through hardness in society. And political politics influence their issues. Yes, the fact that the house didn't survive but was rebuilt. Here we go. There was only a small part of the property that actually belonged next door.
Yes, the original spec house or whatever, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's how society goes through change.
This is such an Ange book. Like,
it's
got a lot of political stuff in it. So I think this is definitely an Ange book.
Socio-political stuff.
Yes.
I also think that Willow was banking on the house being connected to Mary Treat for the monetary gain. It didn't work out, but then Willow could now write about Mary.
Now that actually, that kind of gives it a bit more of a satisfying ending, doesn't it? That she realizes, well, I hope she had a connection, but she didn't. But actually, she's really fascinating, so I'm going to write this book, and that maybe get us out of our not just get out of our financial issues, because it may well not, but it'll at least get Willa out of her depression, you know. So
I felt it was a more realistic ending as well. I feel like had it been Mary's house and like all of Willa's wishes came true, and that would have been too sickly sweet an ending for me. So which
there we go. That Cat says,
and have her own purpose. The US was built on religious freedoms, so Darwinism is against everything the Pilgrims travelled to the new world to achieve.
Yeah, I always find that it blows my mind a bit. The whole
it does. Like the idea that two concepts can't exist. I don't know. I sometimes felt like I was reading conceptual essays instead of a cohesive story. I would agree. I felt like when Willa found out that it wasn't the original house that had been rebuilt, it was gave permission to let go.
I like that.
They could now rebuild their lives. I like that too.
That's a good thought, Kat. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a good one.
For sure. I'm going to move on to the next question because we'll cover this a little bit, but I'm aware that I think we could waffle about this until midnight.
We'll try not to, because it's just going to stray through. Because really, like, it's like, I was listening to something today and they were talking about politics and people are like, oh, I don't get involved in politics. Like, if you're interested in the potholes in your road being filled in, then you're talking about politics. So like everything is about politics. And in this book, everything was political, absolutely everything. So yeah, it just ran throughout all of it, didn't it? And yeah, so I suppose, what did you think in terms of the modern timeline, the political?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was quite obvious. Actually, to be honest, when you told me earlier that Trump wasn't mentioned, I didn't know that. I had obviously inferred that it was Trump. And then in my mind, that's who it was. So I hadn't even picked up on the fact that he hadn't been named.
She's saying him, you know, him and what have you. And I can't believe he's said this, the candidate, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that was good though, because it doesn't date the book. Then it doesn't, you know, it kind of, the book's dated in terms of what's going on in the book, I suppose, but you know,
but there was reference to Obama as well, wasn't there?
It was Obamacare, yeah. So Medicare, is it Medicare?
Medicare.
Is that their free? Is that their social?
Yeah, it sounded like
it's
means tested medical support, I think.
Wasn't it interesting? Because actually that was kind of Nick the grand. So if we think about all of them in terms of their political stance, and what I found fascinating was how the characters were all representative of different political ideologies, and the intergenerational differences, the generational differences in politics was fascinating. And so you've got Nick, who is an immigrant who escaped civil war in Greece. Was it civil war or the Turkish invasion? I can't even remember what it was, where he's escaped, where he'd escaped from. Was it Greece?
I think it was Greece. Yeah.
But Greece escaped from, or Cyprus? I can't remember, because we had a lot of Cypriot refugees here in the 70s in the UK, Greek Cypriot refugees, but I couldn't remember where. But yeah, so he I can't even remember what, he'd come over from Greece, and he'd escaped something. And he'd loved America. Like a lot of people who've gone there, and they've kind of, you know, he came at a time when he could get a good job and he could buy his own house and he could do all of those things. And it's kind of this rose-tinted view that older generations who, you know, go, oh, the country's amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, when you know, there were more opportunities when you were younger for these kinds of things. Kind of like the UK, can't really talk about America so much, but in the UK, people who don't understand how difficult it is to be a young person in the world, and to get a good job, and to be able to afford to even rent a place, let alone you'll never be able to afford to buy a place, you know. So the generational the misunderstanding about how opportunities have changed, and the generational differences in viewpoints were just so fascinating within that. I love Tig, Tig's view on everything, and she's her this way of her bartering and not wasting anything. And when she was talking about
the eco warrior
thing, making the baby food, and she's gone to Cuba, where one of the best healthcare systems, free healthcare systems in the world, is in Cuba, right? And she's got this kind of, she'd come back with an actual knowledge of the place rather than the propaganda of it's a communist country and everyone's starving and poor. It's like, well, no, actually there are lots of things about it that work. Granted, there may be a lot of things that just do not, and they've still got the embargo and stuff like that, so they've got a lot of difficulties. But this whole make, do and mend idea, and this kind of we can't rely on these things and these throwaway things. And I thought she was fascinating. She was obviously very passionate about it all though as well, because she caused quite a lot of her and her brother. I didn't like the brother, I have to say. I didn't like Zeke. And I don't know if I was meant to like him or not, but
just stick with Tig for a sec, because I think what was one of the things that was really interesting was, obviously she's very anti-capitalist, and yet she sorry, interruption. And yet she had the best relationship with Nick.
She did. I love that.
Completely opposing political views, but they were the two. Oh, I just loved their like relationship together.
You know why? And this is what I thought was great about it, because I was talking about this because we've moved to somewhere where we don't talk politics locally where we've moved to, because politically we have quite different viewpoints from a lot of the people that live locally to us, as you can imagine. But we can still have discussions with them without shouting at each other. And actually, that's where all of this kind of modern idea of like not having a discussion, but just not like thinking you can't have a discussion, or you can't have things in common, or you can't get along. And I think Tig and her grandfather, like that kind of embodied this way of going, no, actually, let's just
he's entitled to his views, I'm entitled to mine.
Yes. I found that really fascinating. She was wonderful with him, because she was the only one that he would let do certain things for, and where Willa would just constantly just be frustrated and upset and couldn't listen to him. Tig had far more patience with him, which was interesting. Though I just don't know if that would be true. I just found that like as well. It was like, would she have that much patience with him if she's like really having a go at her brother, who, while her brother is in finance, he's trying to do finance in a, responsible kind of way. Like, he's working within the capitalist system in as responsible a way as possible. I don't know.
I think that she saw her, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think she saw her granddad as a product of his time. He was the way he was because of the way he grew up and the politics that was about when he was a young man. I think she didn't have that patience with her brother because she had grown up in the same world.
Well, also the brother was abusive to her, really, as well, wasn't he? Because in the end, this is it. Because Willa, in the end, suddenly, because the other thing I think is probably why, because having grown up in a house with multiple siblings, there's always someone who's out of favour, but there's also one who's always the golden child, right? And Zeke is the golden child, and I think that's probably what put my back up about him, right? Because I am not that in my house. And so, like, Willa kind of saw him with this because we saw him from her perspective. And he's so good, and he's so this, and he's so pleasing. He's the easy child to get along with, whereas Tig was from the start. She talks about how difficult Tig was and their relationship is, but then she starts to see. Her eyes start to open about how he has just made Tig's life an absolute misery, and because he's the golden child, how awful that must have been for her growing up, like having this elder sibling who everyone loves and adores, and who your mum clearly worships, but who tells you that you call her names, he'd be abusive to her and stuff, and tell her she was useless and all these kind of things. So I really didn't like him.
I mean, like, he had no sense of responsibility, and it makes you wonder, like, is that Willa's fault? I don't know. It made me wonder that. It's like, have you mollycoddled this child so much that he thinks that he can do whatever he wants, including dumping his child with their grandmother, and fly off and do whatever you were doing before? Like,
I found that bit I did wonder to myself, is that grief? Like, is that because he, was that the grief that he couldn't deal with his child, or was that the fact? I just couldn't reconcile what that was about.
Like in the beginning, maybe, but then when he was swanning off doing all his finance,
he was quite happy to just, because when Willa said, I just need a permission so that when he goes to medical, and he's like, right, I'm going to sign over custody to you. And I was like, what?
But then at that point, Willa should have been like, absolutely not. Come pick your child up and like be a proper parent. Do you know what I mean? I feel like she
mollycoddled him. You're right. Yeah. I think you're right.
So we've got loads of comments.
Yeah, because there's so much to talk about with this family. I think it was really interesting.
There is. So politics weighed heavily in both timelines for sure. Babs is a very political writer.
She's a very smart woman, isn't she? Very smart woman.
Yeah, I've actually got a lot of time for her. Obviously, I saw her talk live at the Women's Prize Live when Demon Copperhead won, and she's a really cool woman.
She read the audiobook. She read it.
Yeah, because I listened to some of the audio. I read most of it on my Kindle, but I listened to some of it, and she was very good.
I'm surprised that she read it. She was okay, but like, you know, a good audiobook.
I really like, but I think because I've heard her speak, like I had like this, I could imagine her literally standing there reading it to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, the granddad was a fascinating character for me. Yes.
Yeah. And also like that generation just feeling like no one's listening to us. No one's listening to me. They start to like, as you get older, you start to feel more and more irrelevant. Like, and I think that's why that anger kicks in and actually, no, I am relevant and I have got things to say. And and I think Tig respected that about him in a way. Like, but yeah, it was a fascinating character.
Agree. Lots of love for Tig. Tig love from Kat, Tig love from Berna, Tig love from Charlie. Tig and her granddad's relationship was heartwarming for me. Yeah, I think so too. Tig and Nick were great characters. Yeah, their relationship was very interesting. Tig had ideals, but was also very practical. She was.
Yeah, because she's looking for. She's like, you're all harping on about things as if that this is the way forward. We have no more resources. Like she's literally like, isn't it her that says when they're talking about the whole theme of shelter and unsheltered, isn't she the one? She's like, you'll be standing in the light. That's what you need to enlight, be in light, like you'll like that's what it will be. And she was great.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like that both Tig and Thatcher stood up for what they believed in, which was important. Their beliefs went against the grain. Yeah. Though I do find that I liked Tig better than Thatcher. I agree that there's parallels to draw there, but Thatcher just annoyed me a bit.
Did he? What annoyed you about Thatcher?
I don't quite know. I don't know whether it's like his wife that annoyed me. Like,
his wife was terrible, but his wife was a product of her times as well. But she was like, she was like,
but like his whole like trying to be this person to like fit in with her social requirements.
Yeah, and basically it's a thing of the time, right?
Yeah,
people married people they didn't have a clue about, and then he basically married this woman because she's beautiful and because socially she would be far above where he would normally get married. So he feels he's lucked out, right? She's married this and then he gets to know her and realizes actually when he sees Mary Treat and what she's like, he's like, I have nothing in common with this woman. But that's probably majority of it, wasn't it? Majority of marriages. But the fact that he's this kind of like, I don't know, scientist and he also starts to see the holes in this society they're living in through Caruth and people. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just felt like he was a weak man. I think he's strengthened towards the end, but I just like if you compare him to Mary or Tig, then he just is a bit of a wet lettuce in comparison. Like it's like, come on, man. Get it together. Did I read that one? Yes. Zeke was annoying for so many reasons.
Tons of reasons.
I think he was written to be disliked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the fact that Zeke did not care about his child made Tig most furious, maybe. Yeah, though actually in the end that turned out to be a blessing for her, right?
Completely. That's when Willa sees her with him and she's like, she's a parent, like she knows, she sees it. Because initially she's like, you've no idea, you think you want this baby, you don't know, you've no idea. But then she starts to realize, no, Tig does know what she's taking on. She's not being that naive.
She's not stupid. I think Tig and Willa were actually really similar, so that's why they clashed. I didn't think that.
No,
that classic mother-daughter thing. I thought Willa was more like Zeke.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that because I didn't think she could they didn't get each other. She didn't get her daughter, whereas she got Zeke because Zeke's kind of done the thing, which actually that was a big theme for Willa, wasn't it? We'd done everything we needed to do. Like, because Tig was like, you move me around constantly, but we were looking for tenure, we were looking for security, and we got it. And it's like, yeah, you got it. And then it just all collapsed underneath you, right? So Willa kept saying, we did everything we needed to do. We did everything we should have done to be in a better position than we are now. So she's kind of followed this path of career and stuff, which is what Zeke's doing, and Tig's doing the opposite. So that's why I think they clashed, because they couldn't understand each other. They couldn't understand each other.
I loved in the end that Tig was the better parent for Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I thought that was a really nice ending for Tig, actually.
Yeah.
And obviously she got with the boy next door, and I just thought that was quite nice.
Lovely.
How cool that you got the opportunity to hear her speak. It was very cool. His name for me, Dusty. Hi, Roz. This is usefully identified for me. This is a Kingsolver I don't have to read. Some of her books I love, but some
this is very much
Which other ones have you read, Roz, that you found disappointing? Just
Gemma wants to put them on her list. I've got the Lacuna over there, which is massive, by the way.
Yeah, they all are.
The Lacuna is miles. I have to grab a copy of it. Where is it? It is miles bigger than than Unsheltered. I'm sure it's like twice as wide as this.
The Lacuna won the Women's Prize before, didn't it? Did it win, or was it just nominated? I can't remember. But I've got the Bean Trees as well by her. I think Thatcher had a harder time sticking up for himself because of his time period. He was more submissive in the beginning, but I think Mary gave him courage. Courage helped him too. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he had a character arc. I
liked his ending as well. I like their kind of happy ending that she gave him.
I don't know. I just think, there's some characters where, like, if they were real humans, you just wouldn't like them. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just not my kind of person. I
didn't find him offensive. I wasn't offensive. You know what I mean? As in, I just didn't find him. I didn't feel strongly about him either way, to be honest with you. I found the Mary treat. But I was disappointed that I wasn't seeing Mary's perspective. That's what I was disappointed by.
I just thought I wouldn't want to go for a beer with him. Do you know what I mean? I think it'd just be really boring. I'd go for a beer with Mary.
Well, you couldn't go for a beer with him down in
It's no alcohol.
There's no alcohol.
Indeed. Roz got a slide off. Oh no, I won't find out which Barbara Kingsolver books to avoid. Yes, Tig and George's relationship was refreshing. Yeah. Oh, it's not George, is it? Is it Jorge? Thank you.
Jorge.
Loved Lacuna. Hated Product of Summer.
There you go.
Noted.
The Lacuna is excellent.
The Lacuna is excellent.
Oh, two pleased about this.
2 votes for Lacuna.
Hi, Gemma. My behaviour was irritating.
Okay.
I think she's laughing about going for a beer with Thatcher.
Oh, can you imagine though? Like, it'd be lots of silences and like, so how's the weather?
Oh, Darwin, eh? Great.
Yeah, Darwin. We talked about him last time. Okay. Okay, so this I thought was quite interesting. How did feminism compare across the two timelines? Because I think we had, obviously, Tig, that we've just been talking about a lot. I think she represented quite a lot of feminist ideals in the modern timeline. But I think Mary Treat was a feminist for her timeline, but they were obviously very different people. And I think it was interesting to look at how feminism has evolved from Mary Treat through to Tig. And I thought that was actually really well done, and one of the through lines that I enjoyed more.
Definitely. Yeah, and also this idea about, I think in the modern timeline, talking about that, like what some of the debates they were having, if I remember it correctly, that Tig was having was around this idea of women and the free labour of women propping up, which is a Marxist feminist ideal, actually, because I like a bit of Marxist feminism, that the like capitalism is built off of the backs of women doing a lot of free work.
Oh, for sure.
So basically, Tig was going on about that, and about the child, so that kind of thing. But then the whole Mary Treat and her lack of recognition of her as a scientist and the work she was doing, alongside all these much more famous male contemporaries, and the fact that she had a husband. Didn't her husband like run off with another woman, go and practice free love or whatever it was called?
I think so, yeah.
But she was like, great, now I can do science. Brilliant.
I can bring away science and yours.
Exactly. It's the only thing that allowed her to do that, really, wasn't it? So I think it was interesting. I kind of, like I said, I was really sad we weren't getting Mary Treat's perspective. I don't know why Kingsolver chose to show us things through Thatcher's. I just still don't get that. Why it was
because he was in the same house. I know.
And I get that because it's also like, you know, it's all fiction. Like she could have put her in Mary Treat's house, couldn't she, or whatever? But I just don't. I don't know why that was a narrative choice, because I think Mary Treat's story is fascinating.
Yes.
And in terms of like the women as well within the book, you know, when like the girls that he's teaching in high school and stuff, like the idea of the education of women was like a big thing in that past timeline.
Yeah.
And he's comparing his sister-in-law to his wife as well, and their views on women and what women should be doing. And when his sister-in-law has to put on a corset and stuff for the first time and all of that, I think I think it was interesting, I think, comparing the two different things. But again, I don't know how comparable they are in terms of what they were talking about, because Tig is clearly educated, though she decided not to, like they were banging about her going back and finishing her degree, but you know, and Willa's very educated. So in terms of like the focus of the feminism within each timeline, I think was different. I don't think it was like saying, oh, we're still in the same position.
No, absolutely not.
You know, whereas it was saying politically, like we're probably still in a similar position. But like the feminist stuff, I don't know if you could compare really. I don't know, because there were different things.
They were, but like I say, I think there were similarities between them. They were both, as you say, educated women, and they were both pushing against the grain. So with Mary being like Darwinism, but Tig pushing against capitalism. Like they're both pushing against these very embedded, popular ideals,
very patriarchal
ideals, and they're both trying to push against that tide and really feeling like they're getting nowhere, right? So I think there were some similarities, obviously very different topic areas, but yeah, I think, like, imagine if those two had a beer. That'd be cool.
I think that would be cool. I'd join them. I would join them.
I would like to join them.
But yeah, the women as well. And actually, that was the other thing. The girls in Thatcher's class being taught, and they were like, is this a suitable topic for young ladies and what have you? And all of that kept coming up, didn't it? And then one of his like students leaves school, and the other, doesn't he marry the little maid? Mary Treat's maid, housemaid, Selma.
Yeah.
Aww.
But it was interesting how like the boys didn't get as educated because they had to go and work.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I hadn't really thought about that before. Yeah. It makes sense, but yeah, it was interesting. Kelly's here. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
I would really like to know more about Mary. I had never heard of her. Learning about her was one of the good things.
And interestingly, because I was chatting with them, I was chatting with Jolene about Naomi Klein and Doppelganger, and she cites Naomi Klein in the back of this book as one of her books being a big influence.
Was it Naomi Klein or was it Naomi Wolf?
Naomi Klein, because Wolf is the beauty myth. You're going to be doing that thing. Naomi Wolf wrote the beauty myth in the 90s, and Naomi Klein is the one who wrote Doppelganger, who keeps getting mistaken for Naomi Wolf.
Yeah, but what else?
Around, right?
What else is Klein written?
So she says here, 3 illuminating books guided my hand as I wrote. This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. Because Naomi Klein is kind of like, she does examine capitalism like and Mark and stuff like that. Like if you read, have you read Doppelganger, haven't you?
Yeah.
And so she talks about her other books about branding and blah blah blah. So I think Klein does a lot of chat about capitalism, doesn't she?
Interesting.
Which I felt like straight away I was like, oh, I'd like to go and read that actually, because a lot of the things that Barbara Kingsolver is talking about in this book are things that I am absolutely fascinated by, right? So then it's like, maybe I want to go and read a non-fiction book about it rather than reading, but not that rather than reading, because it's actually been a really interesting read for me. But yeah, I kind of want to go and find out more about them.
I loved how Mary couldn't be recognised by society, but she was well respected by the men in her field of scientific research. That is pretty cool.
But imagine like she's got as far as she got with like no formal training in any of it. She's just incredible, like,
and the fact that she got people like Darwin to listen to her, and like, what an incredible woman. Have to head out, but love being with you today. So glad I got the rider. Oh yeah, Jolene thought it was last Sunday, so she was like, I was looking everywhere for it, I couldn't find it. So, yes,
I did well.
The free labour was falling to Willa and Tig in the modern day.
It still does, as we know. Like we still know that even in, I mean, this is why the whole idea of women having it all is just like this big myth everybody's been sold, so that you can still go to work full time and do all this stuff. So you can go to work, but you still also need to do all the stuff. But you can have it all. You can have it all.
You lucky thing.
You lucky. Your mum couldn't go to work full time. She had. It just so happens that you need 2 wages now. You couldn't survive on one.
Don't get me started. We could go off on a whole tangent.
Oh yes. Let's both go on.
We'll need a whole other live show to talk about that. I think Thatcher realises that he has the capability to speak up and doesn't, but Mary's situation gives him the courage to finally do it. It also made him realise the importance of educating his female students. He showed interest.
Yes.
I did like it when they were like preparing for his like presentation or whatever it was, where he had to talk about Darwinism without like
mentioning
evolution. About Darwin.
Was it descent?
I did enjoy like that whole scene.
What did he have to call it? The theory of descent with modification through descent. Something like that.
I love that. And the way he had to like trick it round, like to say, well, you've just agreed with Darwinism. I really enjoyed that section actually.
I found his principal and Landis were just the most horrific people ever. Just horrific.
I knew nothing about Mary, but would like to know more. Yeah, she was cool. Love that Mary went into the field and investigated the natural world. She wasn't afraid of getting her hands dirty. My favourite scene is when she's experimenting the Venus flytrap.
Oh yeah, when she got a finger in it.
Was that the first time Thatcher met her? I think it was.
She has to call him in because the dogs are in the house.
Oh yeah, that's right. And she can't move because she's feeding her finger to a plant.
So she was like, and it didn't quite. It was nibbling on her finger.
I did think that as like a first introduction to Mary, I thought that was so good, and like the description of all the spiders in like the jam jars and whatever, like, all around the front room, and like, I could really picture that. I loved that as an intro.
Yeah, she was fascinating.
There are still schools.
I think you're right.
Evolution is not taught in the US. Like what?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in some states.
No.
Yes, you're not allowed to teach the theory of evolution in certain states in the US. I'm sure this is true. I have to Google it.
My mind, like,
I feel like, I'm not sure which ones it's like a Bible Belt one. I'm not sure which.
Pat is agreeing, which is scary stuff. That is insane. Like,
this is what happens when you see this is. Because I don't think of the UK as we're quite a secular society here in the UK, right? So I never think of it that way, but we are. Religion and politics, try not to mix. And then also religion. Then you've got religious schools, but you can also there is a national curriculum that is not based on religion, so everyone has to adhere to us, but unless you're a private school or an independent school. This is why there are problems with those, but let's not go into that. I'm just going to get on my soapbox about that. Oh, let's not get into it.
Yeah, that actually blows my mind a little bit, I have to say. Right, let's go for this. Why was the book called Unsheltered?
The whole theme of shelter and unsheltered ran throughout the whole thing, right? This whole idea of shelter and a home and having shelter and being sheltered and being sheltered in the terms of not knowing stuff as well. I think in terms of the education of women in the earlier books, and then also they both talk about in both timelines, they talk about this idea of seeing the sky and being brought out into the light. So I think it just ran throughout the whole thing, and I think it was quite a good title for it, actually.
Yeah. It's quite, like you said, I think you can talk about sheltering or unsheltering of each character. You could assign that to each of them in different ways, right? And even when we talked about Zeke earlier and the fact that Willa mollycoddled him, we could say that he was overly sheltered.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's this whole idea of literal and metaphorical sheltering and unsheltering throughout the whole book, which just kept cropping up, didn't it? So I think
she used the word shelter and unsheltered quite a lot, didn't she, in the actual narrative?
Yeah, it was a big motif all the way through. And actually, and I kind of like this whole idea of being sheltered or having your eyes open to the truth or to what's going on around you. I thought was just really interesting. And actually Willa goes through that whole process herself, doesn't she, of not seeing her daughter or kind of she goes through this act of depression and kind of grief for this life that she'd imagined she would have had by now, and then kind of so and then her eyes being open to what her daughter's saying is true. We can't rely on old systems and old ways of doing things anymore. We have to just accept these are the things that are going on. And I felt it was interesting.
Jane saying, how fragile our security or our idea of security is. What or who can we actually remember?
Yes,
I think that's a good point. And if we take shelter as the physical shelter of a home, right? What actually is home? Because it isn't really the bricks and mortar, is it? It's the people. It's the people that you live with. It's the people that you surround yourself with. That's really your shelter at the end of the day. How sheltered you are seems to make a difference in your beliefs and expectations.
Completely. Jane. I think that idea of security, because she was so fragile, wasn't it? It basically Willa's whole plan for her future just came apart with him losing the college closing, him losing his job, and we shouldn't be here. I think it was a good theme. I do.
Okay. I am probably just going to do one more.
Because we talked about quite a few of the questions, haven't we, really?
We have. Okay, let's do this one. Was nature an important theme and why?
I'm trying to think if it was in the modern timeline. It was obviously definitely a huge theme in the 19th century. I want to keep wanting to say Victorian timeline. In the 19th century timeline. And I think really the 19th century timeline, it was all linked to, and actually the way the natural world has declined in the modern timeline, when you think about it, because we're even given this idea of the pine barrens and the way that they were kind of encroached upon by humans, and the mining and everything else that went on there. And then you come later on, you see Willa visits the same part that Mary Treat used to go to, I think. And it's the way it's changed over the century and whatever since Mary Treat was there, and what humans have done to it, and what we're now reaping as a result of all of this in climate change and everything else. So that was it did play a huge part in the modern timeline. I was sitting there thinking maybe it didn't, but it did. More of our impact on nature, I think.
Yeah. And I think it was mentioned in the modern timeline when they were researching Mary Treat that there are like no new species now to discover. Like Mary Treat was discovering new species of plant, and that there's no more of that. That's done. Right. And actually, we're now watching species disappear. So it's quite sad in a lot of ways. And like I say, Tig was quite eco warrior about these things, about the fact that like we can't continue to.
We're using too many resources.
Deplete the resources at the rate we're going. So it's quite sad, really, the comparison of the two in the two different timelines. In Mary Treat, it's all exciting and new, and all these wonderful new discoveries about animals and plants, and then when we get to the modern timeline, it's just doom and gloom, right?
It's the start of the Industrial Revolution, isn't it, as well? So I mean, which is where you can kind of see this massive like impact of humans on the planet from that point onwards. Which it's crazy what humans have done in like less than 200 years.
Yeah, for sure. Nature versus nurture.
Oh, interesting as well. Nature versus nurture. That is an interesting one when you think about Tig and Zeke.
It is interesting. Just digesting that a bit. Which of our beliefs can we rely on? Changes in beliefs over the generations.
Yes. I mean, I found that fascinating, which is what I liked about the modern timeline, was all these different intergenerational kind of interactions between them, and the different political kind of beliefs and the expectations different generations have for things. Because she literally at one point, Tig's like, open your eyes, like you're not going to have this. Like, what do you think's going on here? Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting.
I enjoyed when they went to see the Christmas lights and the question around why we pay to use all this electricity. Tig's favourite was recycled materials being lighted by the houses around it.
Yeah.
BK always big on nature. Yep. I think science background.
I mean, you can imagine. I mean, you can imagine actually. Because that and the Poisonwood Bible, she knows so much about plants, actually, doesn't she?
Featured in Demon as well. Like, I mean, she's from Appalachia, right? So, like, her descriptions of the Appalachian Mountains and like the forests and stuff were very good. It also seems several of the characters found solace in nature. Mary, Thatcher, Tig, and Willa. Yeah, it was comfort in the natural setting. She has degrees in ecology, evolution, and evolution.
Smart woman, and also, a prize-winning, amazing author. So yeah,
she is. She is a badass for sure. I think, Jack, if you don't mind, I think we might have to round that up a little bit
now. We've got just to. Yeah, I think we've kind of covered most of what I would talk about with it, really. So, yes, next book. I hope everyone kind of enjoyed the discussion, even if you didn't fully enjoy Unsheltered. But I really enjoyed reading Unsheltered, and it hasn't put me off reading any more Barbara Kingsolver.
Oh, no, it hasn't put me off either. No.
I just found that like the whole ideas thing fascinating. So, next, flip the script for something completely different. This was also a present from Alice for me for Christmas, actually. I'm glad I got a physical copy of it. So we are going to be reading in September and October. I'm going to read it in October. Grady Hendrix's Horror Store. So if you've never read any Grady Hendrix, I've only read one other, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Grady Hendrix has been a real kind of refreshing voice in the horror genre, actually. And what I really like about his books is the kind of like design of them, particularly this one. I've been fascinated. This is on Everand, and I've wanted to kind of just read the actual book for a long time because it's set in a supposedly Swedish furniture store, and it's a horror story about some, I can't remember if people are going missing in the Swedish furniture store, and the whole like book looks like an IKEA catalogue. And when you open it up, the whole design of it is like that. Let's see if I can show you any bits. Yeah, so yes, so the book itself is designed like that. And yeah, so it should be interesting to read, but also a really good story, because I've read one Grady Hendrix book, like I said, and he was really, really interesting. So yeah, so that is our September-October pick, and it'll be over on my channel at the end of October. A Halloweeny, Halloweeny one. Funny enough, it's probably the first year we've not got next year we've got, what have we got for September-October? Gosh, what was it for September-October?
Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange. Dystopian, not really horror though, but I suppose a bit horrific. But it's the first year when I've had a horror book for September-October. But yeah, so so if you fancy joining us for that, that'd be great to see everybody, and hopefully you'll enjoy it, and be a good thing to chat about. All right.
Well, thank you everyone in the comments. It's been such a great chat. I know me and Jack have definitely got a lot out of talking to you guys about it. And I think we probably could have gone on and talked about it for a lot longer.
Oh my gosh.
Have a 5-year-old to put to bed. So yes, we'll look forward to seeing you all at the end of October, and enjoy your evenings, guys.
All right. Bye everyone.
Bye.